Life has a funny way of testing us. Sometimes it tests our patience, other times it tests our confidence, and often it tests our ability to keep going when the world is laughing at us. Have you noticed? When you start something new, whether it's a business, a dream, or a personal goal, you won't get applause, you'll get opinions. And these opinions will range from, "It's impossible," to, "Who do you think you are?" In the early days, you might hear chuckles behind your back or even in your face. But here's the magic. Those same people, if you persist, will one day clap for you. Not because you silenced them, but because you proved something far greater. That belief beats ridicule every single time. I remember a young man who wanted to be a writer. His first story was rejected by 12 publishers. People told him, "Writing is not for you. Try something practical." He didn't listen. Years later, his books sold millions, and now those same people proudly say, "We always knew he had it in him." Interesting, isn't it? When you win, memory loss becomes a common disease. The truth is, laughter is not always a sign of mockery. Sometimes it's a test of your determination. If every great innovator had quit after being laughed at, we would still be living in caves. So, when you feel the sting of ridicule, remember, it's just the soundtrack of the beginning of your journey. Keep walking, and soon the music will change. The claps will come. And when they do, they won't just be clapping for your success. They'll be clapping for your perseverance, your courage, and your refusal to quit. So my friends, don't measure yourself by the noise of today's laughter. Measure yourself by the silence of your unwavering commitment. Because one day, that silence will break with applause. When we take our very first step towards a dream, the reaction we expect and the reaction we receive are rarely the same. We hope for encouragement, but what we often get is doubt, mockery, or even laughter. And it can sting, not because their words have power over us, but because deep down, in those early days, our own confidence is still fragile. We are learning to believe in ourselves. And when someone questions our path, it's like they're poking at a wound that hasn't healed yet. It's not that people are inherently cruel. Many times, laughter is simply a mask for their own fear. Fear that you might fail and get hurt. Fear that you might succeed and make them question their own choices. Or fear of the unfamiliar itself. Human beings are creatures of habit. Anything that challenges what they're used to can feel threatening. And God, that's why history is full of stories where great innovators were first laughed at. When the Wright brothers shared their dream of flying, people didn't just doubt them, they thought the idea was absurd. If God wanted man to fly, he would have given him wings, some scoffed. Today, flying is so normal that we complain about airplane food. But in the beginning, it was a joke to many. The laughter you hear at the start of your journey is not necessarily about you. It's often about the discomfort your vision creates in the minds of others. Think about it. If you've been living your whole life inside a small, safe circle, and someone suddenly decides to step outside it, your first instinct might be to pull them back, not out of malice, but out of fear that they might get hurt or that you might have been wrong to stay inside. And so, when people laugh, they make jokes, they minimize your dreams, but under the surface, it's a reaction to the fact that you are daring to do what they did not. Sometimes it's also the unfamiliarity of your dream that makes it hard for others to take it seriously. If you tell someone you want to be a doctor or an engineer, they nod. Those dreams are recognized, approved, and understood. But if you say you want to start a business selling handmade musical instruments, or create a YouTube channel teaching advanced origami, you might get a raised eyebrow and a smirk. Why? Because they cannot picture the path to success in that field, so they assume it doesn't exist. Their laughter is more about their own limited vision than about the validity of your idea. In the early stages of any pursuit, there is very little visible proof that your idea will work. People rely on proof before they invest belief. Since you have no results yet, your only currency is conviction, and conviction is invisible. That's why, in those moments, the most dangerous thing is to let their doubt become your doubt. Because once that happens, you'll start to shrink your dream to fit their imagination rather than expanding your reality to fit your dream. You must understand that mockery at the beginning is almost a rite of passage. The laughter you hear now might one day turn into applause, not because the people changed overnight, but because your results forced them to. The same mouths that doubted it, you might later speak proudly of you. And the only thing standing between those two moments, the laughter and the clapping, is your ability to keep going when letting that initial noise drown out your without the inner voice. Ridicule is not proof that you are failing. In fact, more often than not, it's a sign that you are daring to step beyond the safe boundaries most people never cross. The world has a strange way of reacting to courage. It often disguises admiration as sarcasm and fear as humor. When someone laughs at your dream, they aren't handing you a certificate of failure. They're simply revealing their own inability to see what you see. Think about the early stages of any great invention or bold pursuit. If the idea fits within the comfort zone of society, it's greeted with polite approval. But if it threatens to change the rules, it will be met with skepticism, and skepticism often wears the mask of ridicule. When people mocked the idea of electric cars, it wasn't because the concept was inherently foolish. It was because it disrupted the comfort of what they already knew. And petrol engines, gas stations, the smell of fuel. Today, Those same people watch silently as electric vehicles dominate markets. The ridicule didn't mean the dream was wrong. It only meant the dream was ahead of its time. There's also a hidden truth about ridicule that most of us overlook. It can be a sign that you are actually moving in the right direction. If your goal were small, ordinary, and easily achievable, no one would bother mocking it. They would simply ignore it. People don't waste energy ridiculing things that don't matter. The fact that your dream attracts laughter might be the very proof that it is bold enough to matter. It means it has caught attention, stirred emotion, and challenged the status quo. That's the kind of dream worth fighting for. But here's the challenge. Ridicule has a way of getting under your skin. You can be working on your passion, a confident one moment, and suddenly a sarcastic comment from someone you respect can shake your foundation. It's not the noise from strangers that hurts the most. It's the smirk from a friend and the mocking tone from a family member or the condescending remark from someone you look up to. These moments are where most people give up, not because they lack skill, but because they confuse ridicule for truth. To understand the real value of ridicule, you have to look at it as a mirror. Not a mirror that reflects your limitations, but a mirror that shows you who has the courage to walk beside you and who is too afraid to even try. The ones who mock often do so because your journey makes them uncomfortable with their own inaction. You're not just chasing your dream, you're reminding them of theirs, the ones they left behind. Instead of letting ridicule push you away from your dream, use it as fuel. Let every sarcastic laugh be a reminder that you are on a road not many have the courage to take. Remind yourself that the journey from ridicule to respect is walked by every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary. There was a time when the idea of speaking to someone miles away through a small handheld device would have sounded absurd. Today, it's called a phone. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every bold venture has passed through a season of being mocked before becoming a norm. So the next time you hear someone laughing at your vision, don't flinch. Smile instead. Because history has shown that the people who are laughed at today are often the ones the world stands for tomorrow. The ridicule isn't proof of your failure. It's a hint that you're doing something worth noticing, worth challenging, and eventually worth celebrating. Opinions from others are inevitable, but they should never be allowed to define your potential or dictate your path. No matter what you set out to do, whether it's starting a business, writing a book, changing your career, or learning a new skill, there will always be a crowd ready to share their perspective. Some will be encouraging, others will be critical, and a few will be dismissive. That's simply the nature of human interaction. Everyone sees the world through through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and limitations. When you share your goals with people, what they say often has less to do with you and more to do with themselves. If they've lived a life where risk is something to avoid, they'll view your ambitions as dangerous. If they've faced repeated failures, they may project the disappointment onto you, warning you to play safe. On the other hand, if they've experienced success, they might cheer you on because they recognize the courage it takes to start. But here's the important truth. Whether the feedback is positive or negative, it is still only an opinion. It is not a verdict. It is not destiny. The danger comes when you confuse someone's opinion with a fact. A person saying, "I don't think this will work," is not the same as the reality being, "This cannot work." If the Wright brothers had listened to the many experts who said humans could never fly, we'd still be looking up at birds in V. If countless entrepreneurs had let investors reject us, let us define them, the world would be missing some of its most successful companies. The reason these people succeeded was because they recognized a critical distinction. Other people's words are suggestions, not commands. This doesn't mean you should ignore all feedback. Listening is important, but so is filtering. Not every voice deserves equal influence over your decisions. The opinion of someone who has walked the path you're on carries a different weight from the opinion of someone who has only stood on the sidelines. Unfortunately, many people give the loudest voice in their life to those who have never done what they aspire to do. And when you give it that power away, you're letting someone else's fear hold the pen that writes your story. It's also important to remember that even the well-meaning people can project limits, well-meaning the limits onto without realizing it. A family member might tell you to avoid a risky venture, not because they doubt your ability, but because they don't want to see you struggle. While their love is genuine, their perspective is shaped by the belief that struggle is always something to avoid, when in reality, struggle is often where growth begins. If you adopt their limits as your own, you might protect yourself from discomfort, but you'll also protect yourself from achievement. Learning to hold your own visions steady in the storm of opinions is one of the hardest parts of pursuing a dream. It requires confidence, and confidence is built through action, not approval. Each time you move forward despite a negative opinion, you strengthen your belief in yourself. Over time, this belief becomes a shield, not to block out all voices, but to ensure that no voice is louder than your own when it comes to deciding your future. At the end of the day, people will talk no matter what you do. If you fail, they will have something to say. If you succeed, they will still have something to say. Since opinions are guaranteed, the only question left is, whose opinion will you give the power to? Theirs or yours? Many success stories begin with rejection and public doubt. It's almost as if rejection is a mandatory checkpoint on the road to achievement. Think about it. We often admire the finished chapters of people's lives without reading the messy, torn pages that came before. We see the awards, the applause, the spotlight, but we don't always see the countless no's, that the doors closed in their faces, or the days they went unnoticed. Rejection and doubt are not signs that you are on the wrong path. More often, they are signs that you are on a path most people don't yet understand. Consider the story of J.K. Rowling. Before the Harry Potter series became a cultural phenomenon, she was a struggling single mother, rejected by multiple publishers. One editor even suggested she get a day job, as her idea was unlikely to succeed. Today, her books have sold hundreds of millions of copies worldwide. The same manuscripts that were dismissed are now treasured in homes across the globe. The rejection she faced wasn't an accurate prediction of her future. It was simply a reflection of how limited the imagination of those publishers was at the time. Take Thomas Edison, was at the time, or Tiff, who famously failed thousands of times before inventing the practical light bulb. If he had equated rejection with failure, we might still be living in the dark. Every failed experiment was simply a step toward finding the right solution. When asked about his failures, he didn't describe them as wasted time. He said he had simply found thousands of ways that didn't work. That mindset turned what could have been discouragement into determination. The truth is, public doubt can be louder than personal rejection because it's not just one person's opinion. It can feel like the whole world is watching you struggle. This is why so many people quit early. They mistake the chorus of, "It can't be done," for an authoritative truth. But history has shown that the crowd is not always right. When Roger Bannister set out to run a mile in under 4 minutes, the majority believed it was physically impossible. Experts, commentators, and even some athletes doubted him. Yet when he broke the record in 1954, the impossible became possible. And within a few years, others were doing it too. His victory didn't just prove them wrong, it redefined what was possible. Rejection and doubt often serve as a filter. They separate those who are committed from those who are merely curious. Anyone can stay motivated when the road is smooth, but it's the resilience to keep going after being turned away that shapes true success stories. In a way, each rejection is like a weight in the gym. The more you lift it, the stronger you become. If every opportunity were handed to you without challenge, you might never develop the endurance needed to handle the success that follows. It's also worth remembering that sometimes rejection is simply redirection. What you think is a setback may actually be a nudge towards something better. A failed business idea might lead you to an even greater one. A job you didn't get might push you toward creating your own work. The initial no often carries the seeds of a far more valuable high yes. But you only discover it if you keep moving. So, when the world doubts you, understand that you are in good company. The people whose names we remember, the innovators, creators, and leaders, all walked through the fire of rejection before stepping into the light of recognition. The same people who laugh at you in the beginning may later celebrate your achievements. And when that moment comes, it's both humbling and revealing. Life has a strange sense of irony. The mouths that once spread out often become the hands that clap the loudest. Not because they've suddenly transformed into your greatest supporters, but because your success has rewritten their memory of the past. In the early stages of chasing a dream, you are often underestimated. People see you as you are now, not as who you can become. If you're struggling financially, they assume you will always be broke. If you're inexperienced, they assume you will always lack skill. If you failed before, they assume you will fail again. In their minds, the current version of you is the final version. But what they forget is that growth is invisible at first. Just because they can't see your progress doesn't mean it's not happening. When you persist long enough and start achieving visible results, their perception shifts. Suddenly, the same people who warned you against taking risks are congratulating you for your courage. The ones who mocked your unrealistic plans are now eager to share your story as an example of determination. This is the fascinating part. Human nature has a tendency to align with what is working. Success has a magnetic quality that attracts approval, even from those who once doubted you. There's a well-known story about Walt Disney. Early in his career, he was fired from a newspaper for lacking creativity. Later, some of those who doubted him proudly took their children to Disneyland. Did his creativity suddenly appear out of nowhere? Of course not. It was there all along. They just couldn't see it until it became undeniable. The same principle applies to anyone pursuing a dream. People often struggle to believe in something until it's in front of them, shining so brightly that they can't ignore it. Sometimes, when people finally applaud you, it's not just admiration for your achievement, it's relief. Relief that you proved them wrong in the best way possible, without bitterness or revenge. You didn't let their laughter break you, and now your resilience has become something they can respect. Deep down, many of those clapping are also wishing they had the courage to stick to their own abandoned dreams. Your victory becomes a mirror for them, a reminder that what they thought was impossible can, in fact, be done. It's important to note, however, that this transformation in people's reactions doesn't mean they were right to laugh in the first place. It simply means you gave them a new story to believe in. And while it can be satisfying to see the change, it's also a reminder that you should never hinge your sense of worth on external validation. The applause is sweet, yes, but it should be a bonus, not the goal. When you reach the point where the laughter turned into clapping, you'll realize that the journey wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. You'll understand that if you had waited for their approval before starting, you would have never begun. And perhaps the greatest victory of all is that while their opinion shifted with your success, your commitment never wavered. You stayed the course when no one else could see the finish line. Perseverance and consistency are far stronger than the sting of initial criticism. In fact, they are the very qualities that transform that sting into the fuel you need to keep moving forward. The truth is, most people are not defeated by failure. They're defeated by the temptation to quit too early. They stop because they expect success to be instant, applause to be immediate, and results to arrive the moment they put in the effort. But the reality of any worthwhile journey is that it's built brick by brick, day after day, in moments when no one is watching and no one is clapping. It's easy to show up on the first day when motivation is fresh. It's harder to show up on the 100th day when progress is slow, when your results are invisible, and when criticism is still echoing in your ears. That's where perseverance comes. It's the ability to continue even when the emotional rush is gone. Consistency is its twin, ensuring that your progress compounds over time. If perseverance is the engine, consistency is the steady fuel supply that keeps it running. Think about bamboo. For the first several years after planting, there's no visible growth above the soil. All the action is happening underground, where a strong root system is quietly developing. Then, almost overnight, the bamboo shoots up rapidly, sometimes growing several feet in a matter of weeks. That sudden burst isn't sudden at all. It's the result of years of unseen, consistent growth. Many dreams work the same way. You may feel like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, your skills are sharpening, your network is growing, your knowledge is deepening. The breakthrough comes only after the groundwork has been consistently laid. Criticism often tries to convince you that the early, invisible stage means failure. People might say, "See, you've been trying for months and nothing has changed." But what they don't understand is that consistency doesn't always give instant rewards. It's an investment, not a lottery ticket. Every day you stay committed, you're building a foundation that will one day hold the weight of your success. The lives of great achievers are filled with long seasons of before public quiet work, for recognition arrived. Serena Williams didn't become a tennis champion because of a few bursts of inspiration. She became one because of years of disciplined practice. Even on days she didn't feel like playing. Entrepreneurs who build thriving companies don't succeed because they worked hard for a week. They succeed because they work consistently through years of challenges, setbacks, and uncertainty. Perseverance and consistency also create something even more valuable than external success. They build trust in yourself. Every time you keep going despite criticism, you teach yourself that you can be relied upon. This self-trust becomes a powerful shield against the opinions of others. When you know you will show up no matter what, it matters less who doubts you along the way. Eventually, the same people who criticized you may start to see your persistence as determination. At first, they might have mistaken it for stubbornness. Later, they'll recognize it as strength. But here's the beauty. By the time their opinion changes, you won't be working for their approval anymore. You will still be showing up, still putting in the effort, because perseverance and consistency will have become part of who you are, not just what you do. Laughter is often a sign that you are doing something different, and different is exactly where change begins. The world is comfortable with what it already knows. Anything that challenges the norm is first met with suspicion, then resistance, and often mockery. This is not because your idea lacks value, but because it refuses to fit neatly into the existing mold. Human beings naturally cling to familiarity. It makes them feel safe. So, when you step outside the expected, you disrupt that comfort, and the easiest response for many is to laugh it off. Consider the great innovators, artists, and leaders throughout history. Every breakthrough we now take for granted was once considered strange, unrealistic, or unnecessary. Imagine the first person who suggested the idea of a personal computer in every home. People might have asked, why would anyone need that? Or the first person who thought of selling bottled water. Why would people pay for something they get free from a tap? These ideas, they all because sounded from a tap, they can get far, something that fell, and newness can feel threatening to those who are used to the old way. Yet today, these odd ideas are billion-dollar industries. When people laugh at what you're doing, it often means you're venturing into territory that most people haven't imagined for themselves. And God, you're showing them a possibility that doesn't yet exist in their reality. That discomfort often comes out as humor or sarcasm. But here's the thing, history has a pattern. What starts as ridiculous often becomes visionary in hindsight. The same crowd that laughs at the pioneer eventually benefits from the path that pioneer carved. Doing something different requires courage, because you're walking a road without signposts. There's no guarantee of success, no proven formula to follow. And when others can't see your destination, they assume you must be lost. That's when the comments come. Why are you wasting your time? that will never work. Nobody does it that way. They may say these things as a joke, but the underlying message is clear. Return to the familiar. Stay within the boundaries. But here's the paradox. Change never comes from the familiar. Every improvement, every invention, every social shift happens because someone refused to accept how it's always been done. That refusal to conform is what opens the door to new possibilities. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Not just for those watching you, but sometimes for you as well. It's tempting to step back into the crowd to avoid the discomfort of being different. That's why so many people abandon their unique ideas before they've had the chance to grow. If you can learn to embrace the discomfort of being different, the laughter becomes easier to bear. You start to understand that it's not an attack on your worth, but a signpost that you're moving into uncharted territory. Think of it as a strange kind of applause, the kind that only pioneers get in the beginning. And one day, when your different becomes the new normal, the laughter will fade, replaced by nods of approval and stories about how they always knew you'd make it. So, if people are laughing, it doesn't always mean you're wrong. It might mean you're early. And being early is not a weakness. It's often the very thing that makes you a leader. The first to try is usually the first to arrive. Rejection or mockery should be fuel, not a roadblock for your journey. Every sarcastic comment, every dismissive laugh, every doubting glance can either be the reason you stop or the reason you push forward harder than ever. The choice is yours. Some people allow criticism to pierce their spirit and drain their energy, while others turn it into the spark that ignites their determination. The difference lies in perspective. Do you see their doubt as a verdict on your ability or as a challenge to prove yourself? When someone says, "You can't do it," you have two possible responses. One is to shrink back, believing their words. The other is to quietly think, watch me. That second response has been the foundation of countless success stories. And take Michael Jordan, for example. In high school, he was cut from the varsity basketball team. Many would have taken that as proof they weren't good enough. Instead, he used it as motivation to train relentlessly. The rejection became a driving force behind his work ethic, and today he's considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. The truth is, mockery can be a strange kind of gift. It shows you exactly where people think your limits are, and it gives you the opportunity to push beyond them. Without doubt, there is no reason to prove anything. Without disbelief, there is no thrill in making the impossible possible. When someone laughs at your dream, they are, in a way, giving you the perfect opportunity to create a story worth telling. But for that to happen, you have to reframe the way you see negativity. Most people internalize it. They replay the hurtful words over and over until they start believing them. This creates a cycle of self-doubt that becomes heavier than the criticism itself. The alternative is to externalize it, to see it as fuel. Imagine criticism as firewood. If you let it burn uncontrolled, it will destroy you. But if you direct it into a fireplace, it will warm you and keep you going through the cold seasons of your journey. Of course, this is easier said than done. Using mockery as fuel requires emotional strength. It means not taking things personally, even when they feel personal. It means separating your identity from your current stage of progress. Just because you're not there, yet doesn't mean you won't get there. The laughter is about your present circumstances, not your future potential. Unless you quit, in which case their words become prophecy. When you channel rejection and mockery into motivation, something else happens too. You start to work not out of anger, but out of purpose. Anger can be powerful in the short term, but it burns out quickly. Purpose lasts. Purpose says, I'm not here just to prove you wrong. I'm here because I believe in this dream. With or without your approval. Now, that mindset is what carries you through the long stretches when there's no applause, no visible progress, and no one cheering you on. In time, the very people who laughed will see the results of your persistence. And by then, you won't even need their validation. The fuel they gave you in the form of doubt will have already done its job. It will have kept your fire burning until you reached your destination. Your true measure is not in how you start, but in how you persist despite discouragement. The beginning of any journey is rarely impressive. It's messy, uncertain, and often full of small mistakes. You might start with limited resources, limited skills, or even limited confidence. People often judge you based on that shaky starting point, forgetting that beginnings are not meant to be perfect. They are meant to be a starting place. The real test of who you are is revealed in how you keep going when things get hard, when progress is slow, and when critics grow louder. It's easy to look polished when the spotlight is on you and the results are visible. It's much harder to keep showing up when no one notices, when the applause is silent, and when even you begin to wonder if it's worth it. That's where persistence comes in. The decision to keep moving forward regardless of how discouraging the circumstances might be. Persistence is not glamorous. It doesn't usually look like victory. It looks like trying again after failure, waking up early when you'd rather sleep, and continuing to practice when progress feels invisible. Think about a marathon runner. The first few miles might feel exciting, with energy high and the crowd cheering. But somewhere in the middle, when fatigue sets in and the finish line is still far away, the cheers fade and the runner is left with nothing but their own willpower. That moment The quiet, exhausting, solitary push is where persistence is born. Life works the same way. The beginning is exciting and the end is rewarding, but the middle is where most people quit. Your measure is determined by what you do in that middle stretch. Discouragement will visit you in different forms. Sometimes it will come from others, people telling you it's not possible, that you're wasting your time. Other times it will come from within, self-doubt whispering that you're not good enough. Persistence means refusing to let either voice have the final say. It means understanding that the road to any meaningful success is full of moments where giving up seems easier than pressing on. And yet, pressing on is exactly what separates those who dream from those who achieve. The most inspiring stories are rarely about people who had an easy path. They're about those who faced challenge after challenge and kept going anyway. Take Oprah Winfrey, who faced countless personal and professional setbacks early in her career. She was told she wasn't fit for television, endured public failure, and faced personal hardship. Yet she persisted, not because the road became smooth, but because she refused to stop walking. That persistence turned her into one of the most influential figures in the world. What many people forget is that persistence creates its own momentum. Every time you choose to continue despite discouragement, you build resilience. And that resilience not only carries you through future obstacles, it becomes part of your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't quit. And that belief can be more powerful than talent, resources, or even luck. At the end of the journey, people rarely remember your shaky start. They remember that you finished, that you endured, that you stood your ground when it would have been easier to turn back. Your starting point might explain where you began, but your persistence will always define where you end up.